Hi, I'm Marguerite Manning, karmic astrologer and 12th house locksmith. If you've landed here on your YouTube search, I can only assume that, like me, you're fascinated by something or everything the 12th house in your birth chart represents. You should be. As the soul's exclusive doorway into this and every earthly existence, the 12th house does more than just document the universal conditions in which your spirit entered this physical world. It actually exposes the wake of karmic debris that followed you in. Think of it. The cosmic contrails of your unconscious past right there in the 12th house of your birth chart. Who knew? And that's the point. Listen to my 12th house interviews here on YouTube and learn more about the house of your karmic yesterday and what you can do yourself to unlock it today.
Welcome to the Insightful Astrology Podcast, where life is written in the stars, but you get to edit the script. Making astrology come alive, here's your host, Maria DeSimone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Insightful Astrology Podcast. It's me, your host, Maria DeSimone. Welcome to the show. And today, I am beyond thrilled because not only is this one of my favorite astrological topics, but I have the privilege of talking to an expert on one of my favorite astrological topics, an expert who also happens to be one of my favorite astrologers. I mean, really, who's better than me today, right? Well, you guys are, because you're going to benefit from this lady's wisdom when I tell you she is amazing. And you probably already know of her if you're around the astrological world, and if you've listened to the podcast, certainly. But if you don't, let me tell you about her. Marguerite Manning is a karmic astrologer. She specializes in this amazing way of using astrology, and she calls it therapy for the soul. And I'm going to let her tell you more about it, but let me just tell you that she has personally illuminated my life and my past life stuff to help me in this soul. And we're going to focus on this incredible new workbook that she has out that everybody has to buy. And I am not joking. I have done this workbook and we're going to talk about it. I am telling you, you must buy this workbook. So I am going to introduce Marguerite, bring her on the show, and let her tell you more about this fascinating book. Marguerite, welcome.
Thank you so much, Maria. I mean, how does anybody follow a wonderful intro like that? How do they live up to it, actually? But thank you. That was very, very sweet of you, and I really appreciate you. And I have been, since I began this journey when Llewellyn published my first book, Cosmic Karma, back in 2007. I think you were one of the first colleagues I connected with, and I think we were on a podcast together and a few radio shows, and so I know you the longest in this biz. You know, you and Chris.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you are amazing, really. You're so prolific, but you're so gifted in not only writing about astrology, but communicating astrology to people in real time. And so please tell everybody a little bit about your website, your work, and what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. My work, the karmic astrology work that I do, my passion is finding the soul's past in the birth chart, because I truly believe that, Shakespeare was right. Our destiny is in the stars, but the only reason that our destiny is reflected in our birth energies is because it's a cosmic map of what we've deigned to do in this lifetime. Unfortunately, it's not the first lifetime. So our old habit patterns can get in the way of living up to that. So as you know, Maria, the science of astrology is a wonderful, this cryptic diagram of our trade, this birth chart. There's, so many astrologers that use it for transit work to predict the futures based on the energies we move into and influence our birth energies. And many astrologers that are present day, what's going on in our lives, and give us a profile. My work and my passion is advancing the universal law of karma through the scientific principles of astrology, looking backwards in the birth chart and seeing the cosmic contrails of where our soul came from. Because to me, it's one of the most rewarding experiences in my life when I applied it in my own life to my children, to my work, to my husband, to my every relationship, is that the soul understands how to move forward when it knows where it's coming from. If you put a car on the road and you don't point it, and you could point it in one direction, but it's easier and quicker to get there when it knows where it came from and what roads not to take. When you're behind the wheel and you know, okay, that road was closed, or that road is really the longest route. I've been there, done that, and you can move forward knowing, not bringing the past along with you. And that's why I call it therapy for the soul. And that's why my journey with the birth chart, every time my eye goes immediately to my subject, my client, my friend, my child's 12th house. And the 12th house, as you know, is the polar opposite from the 6th house. And the 6th house is, in our birth chart, is our conscious daily life, where the 12th house is our unconscious eternal life. And that makes sense because it's the home of the soul. So where the 6th house is everyday's routines and activities, the 12th house is yesterday's issues and obstacles. And the first house, your physical health. This 12th house, your emotional and psychological health.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody say unconscious eternal. What did you say again? Eternal
life. It's the home of the soul.
That's such a beautiful keyword for the 12th house, unconscious eternal life. I have to, that's amazing. Love it. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. And I love talking to you about this because we always have such great discussions. And I think what we say, okay, the home of the soul, and then we just pat and put that down. But when you think of it, the soul is our unconscious self. So if we go into a shrink's office, this house is what the shrink is dealing with. Yes. If we have any kind of emotional issues, and why? It's because the soul brought it back from its last life. So while I'm not a licensed, psychological therapist, nor do I play a licensed psychological therapist on TV or anyplace else, I do believe that when we want to give ourselves help, we can get to know our souls a little bit better by exploring our 12th house, unlocking it, and see what forgotten baggage the soul dragged in from yesterday. And some of it's good. I mean, there's the 12th house is our creative imagination, and that's the creative imagination of the Steven Spielberg, Maya Angelou, Claude Monet type that inspires alternative conscious levels for people, that evokes them to come to another place for either a distraction or a healing or just for enjoyment. But that's the kind of thing that goes on in the 12th house. And so many times we have our buried talents there that in the past life were repressed or abused. So that's why they are so linked to our soul and so divinely inspired, or it seems that way when we start using them in this life, is because the soul has held on to them for eons.
And this is what I love the most about astrology, Marguerite, is that you can approach it, and you and I have this in common. We really approach it as a psychological healing tool. And the difference between us and the traditional therapist is that by looking at the tool of the birth chart, we can really see a great deal about those potential short circuits that a person is carrying with them, the pain that they're carrying with them, the unresolved trauma and conflict that they're carrying with them in this lifetime. You do it through the lens of accessing the past lives. Exactly. And that is that's what really sets you apart, and really it's so effective. It's just beyond effective. You have done this for me in a personal reading years ago, and your latest book, this amazing workbook, which we have to talk about, allowed me to revisit every aspect of what you did for me during the consultation, but I did it for myself.
So and then you developed patterns to help you move forward, even though, we think we're smart people and it's intellectually we get it, but it just shows you how deeply our soul is rooted in patterns that it refuses to let go unless we consciously force it to.
Yes, and it's all out of pain. It's all based out of pain and fear. And so tell everybody, first of all, give them your website and tell them about the book and how to buy this book.
The website is MargueriteManning.com. That's my name, www.margueritemanning.com. And the book is called Unlocking the 12th House. And when I give a past life read, as you know, Maria, every astrology, the analysis that you do, there are a lot of formulas, and a few of the formulas were published in my first few books with Llewellyn. But this one, I rather than bring people, people that might not be too familiar with astrology into the weeds, I give them the first 6 basic karmic keys to unlocking their 12th house, how to find them in their chart and how to apply it. Then once they've done that, how to go back and with the soul present, in other words, with the soul and the conscious mind working together. On the workbook, there's room for the soul to give input to unconscious without censoring yourself intellectually and consciously letting the soul, almost like automatic writing. We all have the ability to do that.
Yes.
Like a stream of consciousness. That's why they call it a stream of consciousness. It's we're getting out of the conscious way and letting our soul, even if it says peanut butter, put it down, because it means something if the soul is bringing it up at that moment. And I think then when we go back and put it all together in a very conscious way, we get to see, it's very much like, I think I've mentioned this to you before. It's very much like, looking under the bed in the daylight and seeing there really is no boogeyman, but at night it feels very, very real when you're a child. So it's by bringing this light of day into the things that we refuse to address. So the soul is consciously using them to manipulate us to stay safe, by the way, which is really staying safe is not growth. It's staying in our comfort zone and not evolving, not growing, and not experiencing anything new or exciting.
Right. Right. That's and the 12th house is also our blind spot. It is so hard for people to truly see what is in our 12th house with clarity on our own. But your book and your protocol, I mean, systematically, an experienced astrologer understands exactly how you did this, tracing the rulerships, et cetera, but it doesn't matter if you are a seasoned astrologer for over 40 years. Actually using this protocol and writing it out, I guarantee you are going to see something about that 12th house blind spot that you never have before.
Because you've never consciously addressed it. And that's the thing. It's there simmering and bubbling right on the periphery of our subconscious. And until we force ourselves to consciously speak it out loud, then all of a sudden it comes into our conscious level, and we're like, what the heck were we thinking? How can we be manipulated by this? Why do we let this get to us? And it's only then do we start breaking patterns. And breaking patterns is a conscious effort. You have to do it consciously.
It absolutely is. And so people can go to your website directly to get this book, or they can get it on Amazon?
They can't get this book on Amazon because it's a workbook, and Amazon won't sell it on Kindle if it's a workbook. So they can go directly to my website, and it's what I purposely made this workbook typable on your device or your computer, so that you can just print out. There's not a whole lot of printer ink later on, that you can just print out the worksheets. Keep them close to you, especially at your bed at nighttime. Go over them and kind of have this mantra or this program of releasing things that have held you back in the past from living up to the destiny that you chose.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to say that functionality of this book, the way that you designed it, I found as a practical Taurus so wonderful. Because usually if something's online, I'm not interested. It's because I like to hold everything. And the fact that I was able to go through those 6 keys in the karmic worksheet and type everything in, but then print out the papers, and I'm holding the papers in my hand right now, and there's this tangible evidence that I can now write some more notes on or look at and read over and over and have. It is extremely functional. And Virgos will love this, and valuable.
I was just going to say that my daughter's a Virgo, and she's the one I tested it on. And as a rising Virgo, I needed to put that in there for me too.
You sure let your Virgo shine with this book, I have to say. It's wonderful. Now, do you want to go through some of the secret sauce? How would you like to explain?
I can very briefly explain what the 6 keys are and why they're in the book, and then how finding them and their placement in your chart is very easy. I've made it very beginner friendly as well as very concise, where if people aren't familiar with finding their way around the birth chart, they can do that. And by the way, if people do want to visit my website, I've made a very user-friendly birth chart for being used with all my books for people who can't find their way around a birth chart. When I first looked at it, all I saw years and years ago was, glyphs and symbols and signs. Oh my, I didn't know where I was going. So I understand that. And that's why the chart tools is part of this workbook as well, to pull up the chart tools and be able to find your way around a birth chart very, very simply. But finding where each one of these keys are in your chart, it's a basic key, but then finding it in your chart and then going to the workbook and seeing what the interpretation of that placement is, the karmic interpretation from yesterday, is what's really key in bringing things that might have been bubbling just below the subconscious into your conscious mind and addressing them. And the first one is the sign on the 12th. That's why, as you and I spoke very recently, in astrology, we can do, and I always say, like you, Maria, that I use the birth chart as a therapeutic tool rather than a predictive one, although every astrologer can use the prediction. Some of them are much better than others, and every astrologer can do, but I think every astrologer has a passion, and that's probably where they shine, and mine is using it, like you, as a therapeutic tool, and that's where I find the most satisfaction and where I have my most passion. So that's why, starting with the 12th house is the home of the soul, and as we spoke before, this is where Edgar Cayce and a lot of people have believed that when the soul makes its entry into this physical lifetime, it arrives on this physical planet 30 degrees above the eastern horizon. And in the birth chart, that's the exact degree of sky that we refer to astrologers as the 12th house. So the sign on that 12th house is the first part of the formula. And it's really, really significant. When I go deeper into depth analysis for my karmic counseling clients, even the degree is significant. The decan is significant.
Oh, yes. Wonderful.
But the sign tells the backstory of what I always say, think of it as, an Aesop's fable moral. What is this? Like if you have Aries on the 12th, that's about lost glory for sure. If you have Scorpio on the 12th, that's about lost control. One way or another, you felt you had no control in that lifetime. So, and then I go into how that led to certain improper programming in this lifetime, and you should be able to relate to that. It's this sign identifies it, and it's identified by the glyph position on the 12th, which brings you back to the workbook to find it, and it's very easy to find. But it's a definitive thumbnail description of yesterday's backstory, and that's really important for you to embrace when you're going back to figure out, what did I lose?
And when you say yesterday's backstory, are you referring to the soul's most recent past life?
That's a really good question, Marie. Yes, because I believe that while we've had many lives before, our most recent physical lifetime was a culmination, was our evolution, if you will, of where we left off. So, and I always say to people, and I came to grips with this. I was really studying because I'm thinking, which past life are we dealing with? And while I believe we may have many, many memories of different lives, they're all a culmination. It would be like when you go into college, it's nice to have memories of 5th grade or kindergarten, but all you really have to remember when you go to college is everything you learned in the 12th, because that's synopsis. That's everything all put together. And that's your last physical time on this planet, the last time you spent on this planet. And with people like you, with people that have Pisces on the 12th foot, Edgar Cayce also said something else that was very interesting, that this wasn't the only physical realm, which I believe the earth is co-ruler for Taurus. This is one of the physical, this is the physical realm, but we have other realms. We have Neptune, which is all about spirit. We have Mercury. We can't see it because it's not physical, which is all about the intellect, so close to the sun, brain power, right? And then we have Venus, which is all about talent and that type of thing. When you come in with Pisces on the 12th, a few people in my life that have Pisces on the 12th, and you guys in this lifetime are really getting your land legs for the first time in a while, because I truly believe your last physical lifetime, although I could tell you about it, was very Piscean to a degree, you weren't here for a while. So it's almost like when you come back, people can take advantage of you. People can, even physically, sometimes it's hard getting the knack for things, because it's almost like you're a fish out of water to a large degree.
We're in this world, but not of this world.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So the sign on the 12th is really significant to me, and the degree and the decan. But for the people with this workbook, the sign will be very telling, and will make them. And then when they're going to be asked to think on an unconscious level about what they could add to this story, and you'd be surprised what people fill in, and they don't know where it came from.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am actually going to recommend your workbook to every single one of my new beginners astrology students every year that I start my beginners class forever. That's how amazing this is. I mean it. I'm putting it on my website. I have to have my webmaster put it on my website as a suggested text for the beginners class, because it not only does it unlock the 12th house, but it actually teaches you, if you, in any beginner's class, I teach students about weaving the web of the birth chart in order to unlock the true story behind everything. And so you are an expert at weaving the web of the 12th house. And so by learning this, you actually can learn how to weave the web to everything else in the chart. So, I mean,
absolutely. I feel the same way, Marie. I feel that if you know your soul, it's like waking up in the morning, you know who you are, then it's easier to deal with the obstacles and the things that are getting in your way in this lifetime, the good things too. But it's when we don't know, and I think a lot of people too in this lifetime who are very close with this dawning of the age of Aquarius, we're really close to our psychic ability. So many people have, and I'm sure you see it in charts, have incredible psychic ability. They're really intuitive or they're very spiritual, but they don't know whether they're getting a premonition of things to come or memories from a recent last lifetime. And so they're paralyzed and crippled with fear many times. So wouldn't it be nice to know, that was yesterday. Yesterday's gone. You don't want to do that over, do you?
No.
And that is empowering,
It really is. So key one is the sign on your 12th house.
True.
And unlocking all of that. And now what would be key two?
It's the 12th house ruler. And the 12th house ruler, it tells me who you were in that lifetime and who you wanted to be.
And now you mean the planet ruling the sign on the 12th house cusp.
The planet ruling the sign on the 12th house cusp tells me, in very short synopsis of what that means. It's the ruler of the sign positioned on the 12th house cusp. And that, what that is an indication is it's a universal reflection of what you sacrificed, what you were forced to sacrifice in your last lifetime. Mm-hmm. The sign that it's in tells me who you wanted to be in that last lifetime. And you fell short. Something got in your way and you never quite became that person that you wanted to be. So this is your karmic sacrifice. So if you have Neptune, if you have Pisces on the 12th and Neptune is the ruler, you sacrificed a good deal of your psychic ability and your creative imagination and the thing about you that was truly divine in that lifetime. And that speaks a lot about, that's the part about that key. The ruler speaks about what you sacrificed and what you never got to be.
So what you sacrificed, what you never got to be. Now, I want to ask you, do you use only the modern ruler, or do you use both the modern and the traditional ruler? How do you go about that?
Well, for Virgo, I use Chiron. Okay. And then I use a sub-ruler. I use the sub-ruler of Mercury. So people with Virgo on the 12th Chiron is absolutely it, but Mercury always comes into play in mine. And the same can be said when it's Taurus. Taurus is always, I use Venus, but then, and here's the thing about the Earth. The Earth is always the opposite of the Sun, which is really interesting to me for Taurians because that's their dilemma in this lifetime, is the idea of Taurus and Scorpio, that polar opposite, that axis there is that being earthbound versus the polar opposite where they're being drawn to. So if Taurus is on the 12th, I use Venus, but then I always go to where the Earth was, and I use that as well.
Now, what about if you've got Aquarius there? Do you use Uranus or do you use Saturn and Uranus?
I just use Uranus.
So you're going to go with the modern day rulers, with the exception of, for Virgo, it's Chiron, and for Taurus, Venus, but you consider Earth. And you could look at this in the workbook, guys.
Yes, it's all there in the book.
It absolutely is. Yeah. Okay. So, and this is pioneering. This is really, some of this is very pioneering. I have heard some astrologers, I believe, esoteric astrologers using Chiron as the ruler of Virgo. It's slipping my mind right now who is it Alan Oken?
It was, I'm trying to remember, he's a wonderful astrologer too, and I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book on it, and I read it years ago. It was very, very good. And here's the thing about Chiron. Yeah. Chiron was discovered in 1971 during the time of our first test tube baby. And as you know, it rules technology in that regard, where it's efficient in helping with science and medicine and things like this. And I truly believe when it came to our attention is when they started applying Chiron's rulership to Virgo. And that makes sense.
Very interesting.
Below, yeah.
Now, key number 3. What do we do next?
Key number 3 is your 12th house ruler's sign. Now, that's not necessarily the sign that's on the 12th house. Sometimes it is if the planet is in the 12th house. But the sign that the ruler was in, that could be across the chart. The ruler could be across the chart. It could be in the same house. It could be down below. Whatever sign the ruler was in. This is what I said earlier was your karmic calling in that lifetime. It's something you were struggling to be, you wanted to be, and because of the improper programming from key 1, that sign on your 12th house, you never got to live up to this. You never got to live up to this goal, this dream.
I have to make you laugh. When I did this exercise and I got to this part, I have a story from when I was a little girl that never made sense to me until I did this part. So according to your worksheet, my 12th house ruler sign is Sagittarius, and so I'm born to, quote unquote, enlighten and inspire. But there are some unfulfilled callings that you had us look at. And the number 1 and the number 2 unfulfilled callings that I had was journalist, broadcaster, and then publisher and explorer. But the journalist and broadcaster, here's where the story comes in. When I was a little girl, Marguerite, do you know what I used to play by myself at 8, 9 years old? I used to remember, back in the day, the old school news where they had actual sheets of paper and they would stare
Absolutely.
and talk.
At the microphone, breaking news, right?
That I would play that game every single day. I was this pretend journalist, this pretend broadcaster. And it's so funny because doing this made me realize that, oh, wow, this was an unfulfilled calling from my most recent past life. No wonder why when I was a little girl, this is what I played all the time.
But what's so interesting about your chart with that Neptune, and that goes on to the next house 4, you didn't just want to tell the news and broadcast and talk and make people understand. In the 8th house, Maria, it had to be something that made a difference in their lives, because your last life felt that way, that you had no control and there was something traumatic. So you wanted to spread news, share information, get the word out, but it had to make a difference. Not just make a dollar, it had to make a difference.
I just thought this was so fascinating. And I'll bet other people going through this worksheet, they will have similar experiences of just childhood recollections, because when you're a kid, you really are connecting to past life stuff and not even knowing it. I remember very clearly my son randomly recollected a past life that we had together where we were both homeless due to a fire. He just said to me one day, oh, Mommy, remember when the house went on fire? And
right.
And I mean, he was going on and on about the story. And I knew that he was remembering a past life, because I'm very strongly attached to many past lives of being homeless. Right. And I died. It's like these kids, when you're a child, you don't have the filter as much. So you have access to it.
Well, according to Edgar Cayce, up until the age of 7, they're much closer to that doorway and window than we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you believe them, you validate them, you get them to exercise that muscle so they keep that door open in a very positive way,
Yeah.
So that's good that you validated him and that you let him speak about it,
Oh, sure. So now key number 4. Let's get to key number 4.
That's your Achilles heel. That's where your 12th house ruler, which house that happens to be in. Mm-hmm. And that house tells me about this. It's the crippling emotional wound you could never overcome in your last lifetime. And the same crippling emotional wound that's in some way the same source of pain or improper programming that if you don't address it today can still get in your way, and probably still does. You recognize that. You recognize it is getting in your way. And this is the house placement of your ruler. Where your ruler falls in your chart, which house it falls into, that's the house that in this lifetime is a source of crippling pain, is a source, because it was yesterday. It's a source of obstacles and a source of things that you just can't seem to move past. If it's in the 4th house, it's about mom, home, apple pie, and country. Things go on in the domestic scene. There was either abuse or fighting, or the domestic scene could be the bigger one, your country, war. So, wherever that 12th house ruler falls is where you had the traumatic event of yesterday that you're still carrying around with you today.
But when you help people see what it is, just by recognizing it, you're actually helping them move past it. Even if in this lifetime we experience similar karmic undoings, we get to recognize now that, wait, we're perpetuating this pattern. Oh, exactly. Hang on, we could change this.
Exactly. So if you had your 12th house ruler in the 3rd house, it also tells about your improper programming as a result of that traumatic event. So if you have your 12th house ruler in the 3rd house, you're improperly programmed in this lifetime to be intellectually hesitant, verbally unsure, and socially apprehensive, because that's where you were so wounded in your last lifetime.
Yeah.
So. It and then when you do the workbook, it helps you. How do I get past that in this lifetime? What can I do to change that?
And it does. So key number 5.
Key number 5 is, and this is one of the quickest ways for people to find good information in their birth chart, is the closest hard aspect to your 12th house ruler. That would be a conjunction, a square, or an opposition. And in your chart, they all have little numbers next to them, these aspects. And you can tell which one is the closest by which one has the smallest number and the smallest amount of minutes and seconds. So that one is the most challenging, I call it karmic catalyst. that planet, the planet making this hard aspect, identifies the source of the challenge and reveals yesterday's challenge and reveals exactly who or what was triggering it. So if it's the moon, it was women or your mother.
Yes.
If it's Jupiter, it's grandparents, foreigners, authority figures, spiritual authority figures. So this is the type of thing that, and for some reason, they're back in this lifetime today giving you that same angst. Isn't that funny? Because we're inviting them in.
Yeah. And key number 5 for me was the most illuminating in the sense that I had never considered this astrologically. I know that we went over it during our talk, but right. I never looked at it astrologically. And when you had it written down, your 12th house ruler's hard aspect, closest, I'm like, oh, duh. Here it is. This makes sense. And it was amazing. And guys, even if you're a total beginner, this is not that hard to accomplish. You will be able to do this. Okay. So
and here's one last little tip about that is it also works for the closest soft aspect. That's the talent that you're ignoring in this lifetime. It's not getting air.
Yeah. Wait, say that again. I'm sorry.
The closest soft aspect in your birth chart. And this isn't in the book. I didn't want to put too much information where it overwhelmed people, but the closest hard aspects tells me about your biggest challenge yesterday. The closest soft aspect tells me about a talent or a gift that you have today that's not getting air, that you're not utilizing, that could really take you well above your dreams, that you have to start giving air, you have to start embracing, and you have to start utilizing.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, you're wowing me right now because, of course, I'm thinking about it for myself. But wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I wish that was in the book because that's gold. Wow. But that's what's in a private consultation with Marguerite.
No, but to know that, and that's true. So that don't just say the aspects are really important. The closest soft and the closest hard are the most telling, particularly the closest hard.
Okay, and let's get to the last key.
The last key, and that you need to go through all of them, is if you have any planets in your 12th. If you don't have any planets, that speaks volumes too. It means that you don't have certain issues that other people have, but that does not in any way take away from your last life story, because everybody has a ruler of the 12th. So if you have the sun in the 12th, your vital spirit was held hostage. These are your hostages, what you have to bring out into the open. If it's the moon, your emotional instincts, where if it's Mercury, it's your mind, your ability to speak, your voice. If it's Venus, it's your personal talents or your self-worth. If it's Mars, it's your physical ability to take action. If it's Jupiter, it's your intellectual growth and your freedom, your ability to learn and understand. If it was Saturn, your worldly goals and your ambitions were held hostage in your last lifetime. If it's Uranus, your intellectual genius or your creative individuality, that freak flag that you should be flying today that is not. If it's Neptune, it's your spirituality, your soul was held hostage. If it's Pluto, it's your emotional trust or your power.
And guys, don't worry if you didn't get all that because it is in her workbook. It is there. And I'm telling you, this is gold. This is gold. So you know what we're going to do, Marguerite? We are going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, you have been gracious enough to offer to unlock some of this information with a couple of callers. We will get to as much of it as we can because we're running out of time. So I don't know how much we're going to get to, but we'll be right back, guys. Stay with us, and then you're going to see this in action. Welcome back, everyone. It's Maria DeSimone. You're listening to the Insightful Astrology Podcast, and I'm here with my guest, incredible karmic astrologer Marguerite Manning. And we have a caller on the line. Marguerite is about to put into practice a couple of the keys from her workbook on unlocking your 12th house. We have Zara on the line. Zara, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi. I'm going to put you on with Marguerite right now. Marguerite?
Hello there, Zara. How are you? I pulled up your birth chart. Maria sent me your birth chart just now, and I pulled up your birth chart. And you came into this incarnation, as we were talking about earlier, with Libra on your 12th house cusp. And with Libra on the 12th house cusp, the thing about Libra, it's always about lost self-esteem, always. And in this particular case, and I'm looking at the Decan, but in this particular case, what I can tell you about this is in your last lifetime, you were someone who was really socially gifted, intellectually shrewd, and destined to bring beauty and harmony, and you were very romantic and talented. You were a peacemaker in that lifetime, and your life held the promise of rewarding relationships or collaborations, Zara, and significant mergers. But you allowed yourself to be coerced into using marriage or partnership as a means of some kind of escape because you believed it was your only path to a happier or more luxurious life. I think you were very young, and I think an older and manipulative man coaxed you into leaving with him, and that your talent would be honored, and he would promote you and made you feel wonderful, and the way you didn't feel at home. So of course you went with him. The emotional abuse or humiliating financial neglect you were then forced to suffer at the hands of this very controlling and somewhat sadistic spouse proved so injurious to your self-esteem. Zara, your soul had no choice but to bury your most precious personal assets and suppress all that was beautiful or attractive about you. To this day, you don't really like to hide behind things like masks or costumes or things like that because you don't want people to see who the real you is. But you're also with the ruler of your 12th there in the 5th in Pisces, and it's conjunct Pallas, the warrior woman, and it's conjunct the sun for my purposes. But I want to tell you one other thing about this Libra on the 12th. Because you were forced to find a way to appreciate, to be appreciated outside the loveless confines of your own kind of like marital union in that lifetime, you now have highly developed and instinctually other-oriented intellect in this one that instills you now with inherent diplomatic skills, superior objectivity, and an ability to charm or engage anyone. But it was a highly dependent past, and it left you harboring a deep need to kind of like enhance your own status by attaching yourself to a powerful player in that lifetime. So now in this lifetime, you have Venus, which is the ruler of Libra. It shows me in your last lifetime, as I said, the Venus tells me you were a committed partner or an artist whose personal fulfillment had to be sacrificed. So being in this loveless union where you were manipulated, you were forced to conceal who you loved and deny your inner beauty and relinquish everything that was talented or gifted or beautiful about you. I believe you were forced to look ugly in that lifetime too.
Oh, wow.
And you played down how beautiful you are because it only brought you, I believe this man was very possessive as well. Your karmic tendency was to unconsciously avoid, in this lifetime now, is to unconsciously avoid the personal fulfillment and material wealth you deserve by being drawn to domineering lovers or manipulative partners. Now listen to me. You have Neptune in Pisces, Venus in Pisces, conjunct Pallas. You're a warrior woman in this lifetime, Zara. You're here to empower other women to stand up to male oppression. To stand up to, and I don't mean just, like the Me Too movement. I mean something even bigger than that, where you're saying I can work alongside a man and not feel like I'm a subordinate. And I certainly not let men dominate women or anything on any level in this lifetime, not just for the sake of their sex, saying that they have more power than a woman in particular. That's something that really eats at you at the core in this lifetime. Would you say so?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel like I just left a relationship that was similar to what you were talking about at the beginning of my Saturn return.
Well, wow. It's not unlikely for you to draw these type of people into your life, Sarah, because in this lifetime you want to move beyond it. You want to become empowered, so it'll keep happening. It's like I call it the old universal 2x4. We said we wanted to get over this, to win, to move beyond this obstacle and to be the champion in this thing. So until we're victorious over this particular element, it keeps coming to us, not because we're being punished, but because we said this time we want to stand up to it and we want to move beyond it.
This is amazing. Amazing, Zara. I'm sorry, for the interest of time, I have to cut this off now. But Marguerite, Zara, I know you're relating to everything, and the fact that this is repeating in your current life, get the workbook. You're gonna or schedule a consult with Marguerite. Trust me, you could heal from these patterns and just literally nip them in the bud. You really can. So thank you for being on the call, Zara, and Marguerite. Thank you for that fabulous reading.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Zara, if we have time, I'd love to get 2 minutes for Kelly.
Sure.
We've got Kelly on the line. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
Hi, our pleasure. You're here with Marguerite Manning, amazing karmic astrologer, and I'm handing you right over to Marguerite.
Okay, Kelly, I want to tell you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Well,
you came
Marguerite,
in.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I was just looking at your chart now, Kelly, and I see you came into this incarnation with a Gemini on your 12th house cusp. This is a communicator and a teacher whose mental stimulation in your last lifetime had to be sacrificed. In your last life, you were someone who was really mentally exciting and verbally gifted, and you were destined to become the intellectual voice of your community. I truly believe it was a tribal community, something like a Native American, somebody that was a set of people that were very, very advanced, and they knew many, many things spiritual about healing and all of this type of thing. But I think there was some kind of, your life held the promise of masterful communications and teaching and newsworthy kind of connections, but some kind of careless exchange of or illegal transport of goods and people. I really believe somebody came in and there was either a war or they kidnapped you and they brought you to their way of life. And as a result, you were improperly programmed to believe you had endangered others. Quite possibly a sibling might have been lost in that skirmish. And you believed it was the only reason you were spared was because you had shared some of your ideas, or you had spoke about the things you could do, and people in your community were killed maybe, and you were spared and you were brought to live with them, and you never felt that you had access to the community, access to your people. And as a result, you were never allowed to speak your truth as you knew it. It had to do with healing, and it had to do with information. It had to do with the wisdom of the universe, that you were far well beyond your years. And it's almost like you were coming into a community in that lifetime that was far less intellectually, was not your intellectual equivalent, I should say. Now you have Mercury in your 11th house, and you have it right next to Vesta, which is your spiritual values. This was the hill you wanted to die on. And that's what makes me think this was something of you were some type of Aborigine or a Native American or somebody with a higher intellectual connection to the universe. And you were forced into this community where you were always made to feel like an outcast and a misfit. And yet you were one of the few. You were one of the few people that were spared in your community, and I think you lost a sibling, which as short little aside here, don't let siblings, neighbors, or classmates take advantage of you by invoking that guilt in you, that you survived and they did not.
Wow. I'm wowed. I mean, Kelly, I know she just threw a bunch of information at you, and you're going to digest it. And I'm laughing because I have the unfortunate situation right now of having to cut off your communication and say we're out of time, and I deeply apologize to your soul.
And mine.
I really, really do. But
Kelly, thank you so much for calling me.
If you want more information, go to Marguerite's website and connect with her, MargueriteManning.com. Marguerite, thank you so much, as always, for being on the show. You are an amazing gift to the astrological community. You really are. And I can't wait for us to connect again. Everybody, get this workbook. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. It truly is therapy for your soul. So on that note, until next time, thank you so much for tuning into the Insightful Astrology Podcast. Keep doing everything that you can to learn more about astrology and grow into your soul, because it is obviously a powerful guide. Take care. Bye-bye.